One innocent question from my nephew shattered my sister's carefully built lies. Her face changed, her voice broke, and then she exploded. Your life judges mine every day. That moment split our family forever. Imagine feeling a knife twist in your gut, not from a physical wound, but from an innocent child's words that rip open years of betrayal. That's exactly what happened to me. And in that agonizing moment, I realized my own sister had been meticulously spinning a web of lies about me for years, all to diminish my success and make me out to be a fraud. You see, I'm Ethan. I'm 35, and I clawed my way out of rural Michigan, working my tail off to make it big in Seattle's cutthroat tech scene. But back home, at our monthly family dinner, my sweet 7-year-old nephew, Leo, God bless his heart, pointed to my brand new Tesla, all shiny in midnight blue, and just innocently blurted out, "Mommy says you borrowed that car from your boss to look important." The whole room snickered. My sister, Chloe, Leo's mom, she actually feigned embarrassment. My heart just sank. I smiled, though. Didn't say a word. I just got up and left. That night, my phone buzzed. It was Chloe. "Don't forget the house payment is due," her text read. My reply was simple, chillingly so. "Everything will be settled." She had no idea what I meant. Not yet, but she was about to. I grew up in a tiny farming community, the kind of place where everyone knew your business and your social standing was measured by the age of your pickup truck. Chloe, my sister, is 5 years older. When we were kids, we were inseparable. We shared a cramped bedroom until I was 8. Back then, I genuinely thought we had an unbreakable bond. Our parents, David and Sarah, they worked themselves to the bone just to keep us fed and clothed. Dad managed a local hardware store 6 days a week, and Mom was a school secretary who cleaned houses on weekends. They never complained, but the financial strain, it was always there. Worn furniture, meticulous meal planning, Christmas gifts that were always practical necessities, never toys. Those circumstances shaped Chloe and me in totally different ways. I became obsessed with creating financial security, driven by education and a career. Chloe, though, she developed this fixation on appearances and social standing. She was pretty popular in high school, even dated Mike Henderson, whose family owned the biggest car dealership in the county. Everyone expected Chloe to do great things. She was smart, charismatic, desperate to escape our humble beginnings. But then, at 19, Chloe got pregnant. College plans for Michigan State derailed. She and Mike married fast. His parents helped them get a starter home a couple of miles from where we grew up. What was supposed to be temporary became permanent. Mike went to work for his family's dealership, and Chloe became a receptionist at the local insurance office. Leo, their son, arrived 7 months after the wedding. I was 15 when Chloe's life took that turn. I was still laser-focused on perfect grades, on getting a scholarship that would take me far, far away from that small town. I promised Chloe, though, that no matter the distance, I'd always be there for her and Leo. Then tragedy struck when I was 20. Our parents, Mom and Dad, were killed in a multi-vehicle accident on the interstate during a blizzard. It was devastating, but it hit Chloe especially hard. She was 7 months pregnant with her second child, Lily, at the time, and fell into a deep depression. Mike, well, he was totally unequipped to handle her emotional needs while juggling finances and a 3-year-old Leo. Our parents had left a modest life insurance policy split between us. Instead of using my half for college like they'd intended, I gave a huge chunk of it to Chloe and Mike for a down payment on a bigger house. Their growing family needed stability, and I convinced myself that helping them was exactly what Mom and Dad would have wanted. So I worked 3 jobs, stocking shelves at the supermarket before dawn, answering phones at a law firm during the day, delivering pizzas at night. 2 grueling years later, I transferred to the University of Michigan to finish my computer science degree. Every holiday, every summer break, I'd go home. I brought gifts for the kids. I helped with household projects Mike just never seemed to find time for. After graduation, I landed an entry-level programming job in Detroit. The salary was modest, but it was my foot in the door. I lived in a studio with secondhand furniture, drove a beat-up 15-year-old Honda with almost 200,000 miles. But even on that tight budget, I never missed sending money for Leo's birthday and Christmas presents, always making sure they were labeled from Mom and Dad. 3 years later, I got an offer for a growing software company in Seattle. The substantial salary increase, the relocation package, it was the first real financial breathing room I'd ever had. Chloe's reaction? Mixed. Superficially supportive, but always undercut with little jabs like, I hope it works out this time, or don't forget about us when you're living the high life. In Seattle, my career absolutely soared. I worked 60-hour weeks, earned promotions, eventually becoming a senior engineering manager, overseeing a team of 15. All that hard work paid off. Stock options, bonuses, a salary that finally reflected my expertise. And through it all, I kept close ties with Chloe's family, flying back for holidays, sending generous gifts. When Mike's attempt to open a second dealership location failed, I loaned them $15,000. Never saw it back. When their roof needed replacing, I covered the $8,000 bill. But most significantly, I contributed $900 monthly toward their mortgage for nearly 4 years. Money Chloe increasingly referred to as what we were owed, not the gift it was. Family gatherings, despite my financial success, became incredibly uncomfortable. Mike's parents, Gary and Carol, they were pleasant enough, but they clearly saw me as the family oddball who abandoned small-town values for city living. Mike's brother, Daniel, and his wife, Olivia, were more welcoming, but even they seemed to accept Chloe's carefully constructed narrative about my life. What I didn't understand until much later was how systematically Chloe had been diminishing my accomplishments, all to maintain her status as the successful sibling, the one who stayed true to her roots. While I was building a career through relentless effort, she was building a fiction about my life. And that fiction was about to unravel in the most painful way possible. It was the last Saturday in April, unseasonably warm in Michigan. I was driving from my hotel to Chloe and Mike's for the monthly family dinner. After a particularly successful quarter at work, I'd finally treated myself. A Tesla Model S, midnight blue, premium interior. It was the first truly luxurious purchase I'd ever made, a tangible symbol of overcoming childhood poverty, of years of sacrifice. Chloe and Mike lived in one of those new upper-middle-class subdivisions, the kind that was unattainable luxury to us as kids. Their 4-bedroom colonial, manicured lawn, 3-car garage, it projected exactly the image of success Chloe had always craved. I pulled into their curved driveway, parking behind Gary's Cadillac Escalade. Leo, my nephew, was the first to spot me. He raced out the front door, socks on, despite Chloe yelling after him to put on shoes. Uncle Ethan, Uncle Ethan, he shouted, his 7-year-old enthusiasm infectious as he skidded to a stop next to my car. Wow, is this yours? It's so cool. I climbed out, giving him the high five he always waited for. Hey, buddy. Yep, this is my new car. Just got last month. Leo circled it, mouth agape at the sleek design and that distinctive logo. Can we go for a ride later? He asked. Please. We'll see what your mom says, I replied, already knowing Chloe's likely answer. I grabbed my overnight bag and the gifts, a science kit for Leo, a doll for Lily, his 4-year-old sister, and an expensive bottle of scotch for Mike. The front door opened wider, and Chloe appeared. Floral sundress, an expression that was trying to decide between welcoming and appraising. Well, look who finally arrived, she called out, a tight smile on her face. We were beginning to think you might have gotten lost. Flight was on time for once, I replied, climbing the steps to accept her brief, perfunctory hug. Traffic from the airport wasn't bad either. That's quite the rental car, she commented, eyes flicking to the Tesla and back to my face. Not a rental, I corrected gently. Finally bought something nice for myself. A flicker of something, surprise, annoyance, crossed her features before she masked it with a forced laugh. Well, aren't you full of surprises? Come on in. Everyone's waiting. The house was a familiar symphony of family noise. The baseball game blaring. Lily's chatter as she played with dolls. Ice clinking in glasses. Chloe's pot, roast aroma. Mike's parents, Gary, golf tanned, whiskey in hand, and Carol, meticulously maintained, were already settled. There he is, the Seattle big shot, Mike called from the kitchen doorway, beer in hand. He'd gained some weight. His athletic frame was now soft. Hardly, I replied with a self-deprecating smile. I'd learned humility was my best defense. Just the same old me. Daniel, Mike's brother, and his wife, Olivia, arrived moments later with their teenage daughter, Zoe. They were the ones I actually enjoyed. Daniel, an English teacher, shared my love for sci-fi. Olivia, a pediatric nurse, had a warmth and authenticity that felt so different from Chloe's calculated social performance. Ethan, great to see you, man, Daniel said, giving me a genuine hug. How long are you in town? Just the weekend, I told him. Big product launch on Tuesday. Listen to him, Chloe interjected with a laugh that had no real humor. Always so important and busy. Some things never change. I ignored the jab. My skin was thick enough by now. We moved to the dining room. Chloe had set the table with her best china and crystal, the expensive set I'd gifted them for their 10th anniversary. Lily sat beside me, chattering about kindergarten. Leo was across from us, between his grandparents. The conversation drifted through the usual topics. Local gossip, Mike's dealership, Gary's golf game, Carol's garden club, and carefully edited updates from my life in Seattle. I learned to share just enough to be polite, never enough to arm Chloe. As we finished the main course, Chloe started clearing plates for dessert. That's when Leo, my innocent, curious nephew, pointed to the front window where my Tesla was visible. "Mommy, can you explain again why Uncle Ethan has that fancy car?" he asked. "I forgot what you told me." The room went dead silent. All eyes swung to Chloe. She froze for a split second, then forced a laugh. "Oh, Leo, you're confused, sweetheart," she said lightly. "I just said Uncle Ethan's car is very nice." But Leo, with that unwavering persistence only a 7-year-old can have, shook his head. "No, you told Daddy that Uncle Ethan borrowed it from his boss to look important when he visits. You said his company lets employees pretend they own nice things." The silence that followed was deafening. Mike coughed, clearly uncomfortable. Gary, Mike's dad, poorly disguised a snort of laughter as a throat clearing. Carol's eyebrows shot up. She exchanged a glance with Olivia, whose face flushed with secondhand embarrassment. "Kids say the darndest things," Mike finally offered, trying to break the tension. "More wine, anyone?" But the damage was done. Around that table, I didn't see shock or disbelief at this absurd claim. I saw knowing smiles, exchanged glances. They had heard this narrative before. They believed it. In that single, agonizing moment, years of accumulated slights, of dismissals, crystallized into perfect clarity. My sister hadn't just been subtly undermining me. She had been systematically, deliberately lying to everyone about me. Not just implications, but outright fabricated stories about my career, my character, my success. Chloe came back from the kitchen, her face a carefully constructed mask of embarrassment. "Leo, honey, that's not exactly what Mommy said. Uncle Ethan works very hard at his job. Now, who wants chocolate cake?" The swift change of subject might have worked if not for Lily's innocent follow-up. "But Mommy, you did say that. You said Uncle Ethan pretends to be rich, but really needs our help." Another wave of poorly concealed snickers rippled around the table. Mike shot Lily a warning look. Chloe's face burned crimson. I sat perfectly still, my expression neutral, but inside I was processing this raw betrayal. I had given them over $45,000 in the past 5 years alone. I'd sacrificed my own comfort, delayed my own life goals, all to support this sister who was now portraying me as some kind of fraud. "I think I should head out," I said quietly, folding my napkin and placing it beside my plate. "Early flight tomorrow." "Don't be ridiculous," Chloe protested, too quickly. "You haven't even had dessert." Leo and Lily apologized to your uncle for making up stories. The children looked confused, on the verge of tears, caught in their mother's twisted web. I wouldn't allow them to be blamed. "No apology necessary," I said, smiling reassuringly at them. "Kids just repeat what they hear. Not their fault at all." I stood, thanked Chloe for dinner, made my polite goodbyes, and walked out to my car with my dignity at least intact. As I backed out of the driveway, I could see them gathered at the dining room window, no doubt already dissecting what had just happened through Chloe's distorted lens. 3 hours later, back in my hotel room, reviewing work emails, my phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. Don't forget the house payment is due on the 1st. An extra $200 would help with Lily's dance competition fees. The audacity. It was breathtaking. After letting her family laugh at me, after teaching her children to disrespect me, she still expected my financial support. I stared at the message for a long time before typing my response. Everything will be settled. She couldn't possibly understand the full meaning behind those 4 words. But she would soon. As I lay awake that night, memories of Chloe's betrayals played through my mind like a disturbing movie. That dinner wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of years of systematic undermining. The first notable instance was when I landed my programming job in Detroit. At a family barbecue, I overheard Chloe telling our elderly Aunt Susan that I was just playing with computers all day. When Aunt Susan seemed confused, Chloe laughed and said, "Honestly, I don't think anyone knows what he actually does. It's not like a real career like teaching or medicine." The dismissal stung, but I told myself she just didn't understand tech. 6 months later, when I invited the family to see my new apartment in Detroit's revitalized Midtown, Chloe spent the whole visit pointing out safety concerns, asking if I had good deadbolts. "This neighborhood seems transitional," she told Mike, loud enough for me to hear. "I worry about Ethan living in such a dangerous area." My apartment was actually in one of the city's safest areas, near the university and medical center. But her comments planted seeds of concern with the rest of the family, making them question my judgment. When I was promoted to lead developer after just 18 months, nearly doubling my salary, Chloe's response was telling. "Well, they must be desperate for people willing to work those hours," she commented when I shared the news over a family dinner. "I hope they're not just using you until someone with more experience comes along." What should have been a moment of celebration became an exercise in defending my capabilities. The most egregious example: when I took 3 months off between jobs to develop a fitness tracking app I'd been conceptualizing. I'd save enough to support myself and was genuinely excited about the entrepreneurial opportunity. Chloe told everyone I was between jobs, her tone implying I'd been fired. When the app was completed and I accepted the Seattle position, she described it as me finally finding something after a period of unemployment. As my career in Seattle progressed, Chloe's methods became more sophisticated. She started creating this alternate narrative about my life. My success was temporary, my accomplishments exaggerated, my financial stability precarious. She referred to my apartment as tiny. It was nearly 1,200 square feet in one of Seattle's best neighborhoods. She described my job as stressful and probably not long-term. I'd been with the same company for 6 years with regular promotions. Most insidiously, she began suggesting to family members that I was struggling financially, despite appearances. When I sent Leo an expensive gaming system for Christmas, she told her in-laws that I charged it to credit cards I couldn't afford. When I paid for everyone's dinner at an upscale restaurant during a previous visit, she later told Daniel and Olivia that I'd been showing off beyond my means. What I didn't discover until later was that Chloe had been systematically lying about our financial relationship as well. Through casual conversations with Daniel after the disastrous dinner, I learned that Chloe had told everyone she'd been helping me out during tough times. The $45,000 I contributed to their house payments over 4 years. In her version, that was money she had loaned me during rough patches, which I was now repaying. The $15,000 I'd given for Mike's failed business expansion, Chloe claimed that was money they had inherited from our parents that I had borrowed when I moved to Seattle and was slowly returning. The $8,000 for their roof. A generous gift from them when I couldn't afford to fix plumbing in my apartment. Each revelation was more painful than the last. The question that haunted me wasn't why Chloe would construct such elaborate lies. It was why I had allowed myself to be exploited for so long. The financial support I provided wasn't just generous. It was excessive to the point of self-sabotage. While making their house payments, I delayed buying my own home. While funding Mike's business venture, I'd postponed investing in my retirement accounts. While covering their emergencies, I'd worked overtime and sacrificed my own comfort. The psychological toll was even greater than the financial one. For years, I'd endured subtle jabs and dismissive comments, always making excuses for Chloe's behavior. Asterisk, she doesn't understand my industry. She's insecure about her own choices. She's under pressure from Mike's status-conscious family. Asterisk, each time I visited, I watched Chloe work to maintain her image as the successful sibling who had stayed true to their hometown values, while I was portrayed as the somewhat pathetic outsider who had sacrificed personal connections for a precarious career in a distant city. The more I reflected, the more I recognized the sophisticated manipulation. Chloe would praise me in one breath. Ethan is so smart with computers, and undermine me in the next. Though I worry all those hours staring at screens is why he can't maintain relationships. She'd thank me for gifts to her children, then imply to others that they were an attempt to buy affection I couldn't earn naturally. Most painful was the realization that I'd enabled this treatment through my own desire to maintain family harmony. After losing our parents, Chloe and her children represented my only real family connection. I tolerated the disrespect, absorbed the financial burden, and swallowed my pride, all to preserve a relationship that in reality existed only on her exploitative terms. The incident with Leo pointing at my car was simply the most public manifestation of a pattern that had existed for nearly a decade. The snickers around the dinner table confirmed what I'd suspected but been unwilling to face. Everyone in Chloe's circle had accepted her fictional narrative about my life. My own accomplishments had been twisted into a story that diminished rather than celebrated my success. As dawn broke over the hotel parking lot, I made a decision. The pattern would end now. No more money. No more silent acceptance of disrespect. No more allowing Chloe's insecurity to define my relationship with my niece and nephew. It was time for the truth, delivered not with anger, but with the calm, unshakable certainty of someone who finally recognizes their own worth. The morning after that disastrous dinner, I sat in my hotel room with a cup of mediocre coffee, watching the sunrise and formulating a plan. My first instinct, honestly, was emotional. Cut ties completely, walk away, never look back. But that approach would only reinforce whatever twisted narrative Chloe would inevitably construct about my departure. I needed to be strategic, methodical, and above all, factual. I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet documenting every single financial contribution I'd made to Chloe and Mike over the years. Bank transfers for their mortgage payments, 81 of them, $900 each. The $15,000 wire transfer from Mike's business venture. The $8,000 check for their roof repair. Countless smaller expenses. Birthdays, Christmas, Leo's baseball equipment, Lily's dance lessons, even a family vacation to Disney World that I'd largely funded but couldn't attend due to work. The total was staggering. Nearly $73,000 over 8 years. Not loans, not investments. Gifts. Gifts I never expected to be repaid, given out of love and familial obligation. Gifts that Chloe's lies had transformed into evidence of my dependence rather than my generosity. Next, I pulled up my employment history. Offer letters, promotion announcements, performance reviews, stock option grants. Documentation of my actual career trajectory, not Chloe's fictional account. I downloaded statements showing my investment portfolio, my retirement accounts, and the recent purchase agreement for my Tesla, all paid in full. No financing involved. While compiling these materials, I noticed a new email from Mike's brother, Daniel. Hey, sorry about last night. Can we talk before you leave town? I suggested meeting for breakfast at my hotel. An hour later, Daniel arrived, looking uncomfortable but determined. That was pretty awful, he said after ordering coffee. Olivia and I were talking about it all night. We had no idea Chloe had been, well, saying those things about you. How long has it been going on? Years, I guess, I replied quietly. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. At first, it was just little comments about how you were struggling to find your footing in Seattle. Then, gradually, it evolved into this whole narrative about how she was helping support you while you tried to establish yourself. He looked up, his expression pained. And we believed her. I should have questioned it more. The stories never quite aligned with what I could see of your life, but Chloe was always so convincing. She'd show us texts from you thanking her for help. Talk about how you called her for advice on financial matters. Those texts were thanking her for forwarding my mail, I explained. The financial discussions were me offering to help them, not the other way around. Daniel nodded slowly. I'm starting to see that now. Look, Ethan, I feel terrible. What can I do to help fix this? His sincerity was touching, but the situation required more than one ally's support. Just tell the truth if it comes up, I replied. I'm going to address this directly. After Daniel left, I called Dr. Evans, my therapist in Seattle. This was bound to happen eventually, Dr. Evans said after I recounted the dinner incident. What's important now is that you establish clear boundaries while taking care of your emotional health. I'm planning to confront her, I explained. Not emotionally, but with documentation of everything. The money, my career, all of it. That approach makes sense, he cautioned. But prepare yourself for defensive reactions. People who've created false narratives often respond to truth with even more elaborate deceptions. The key is to remain grounded in facts while accepting that some relationships may be permanently altered by this confrontation. Next, I called Amanda, my financial advisor. I've been telling you for years that your support of your sister's family was excessive, she reminded me. From a purely financial perspective, ending these payments is long overdue. That money should be going toward your own goals. The home purchase you've been planning, the startup idea you've been developing. I know, I acknowledged. Family obligations are complicated. They are, she agreed. But financial boundaries are part of healthy family dynamics. I'm sending you a summary of what those contributions would have amounted to if invested over the same period. Seeing the opportunity cost might strengthen your resolve. The document she sent was sobering. Had I invested that $73,000 instead of giving it to Chloe and Mike, it would have grown to nearly $110,000, given market performance. My next call was to my boss, Veronica. I explained I needed to extend my time in Michigan by 2 days for a family matter. Take whatever time you need, she said. The team has the launch under control. Family comes first. The irony wasn't lost on me. I've been putting family first for years, just not in a way that served either Chloe or myself in the long run. By enabling her behavior, I'd become complicit in it. By mid-afternoon, I had a comprehensive plan. Rather than an emotional confrontation or public exposure, I would request a family meeting with everyone who had been present at dinner. I would present the facts calmly and clearly, then establish new boundaries. I spent the rest of the day preparing for various scenarios. If Chloe denied everything, I had documentation. If she became emotional, I would remain calm. If Mike became confrontational, I would redirect to facts rather than engaging with anger. My goal wasn't to punish or embarrass them, but to end the cycle of deception and exploitation. That evening, I texted Chloe, "We need to have a family meeting tomorrow. Everyone who was at dinner should be there. I'll come by at 2 o'clock. Her response was immediate and defensive. What's this about? We have plans tomorrow. Change them, I replied. This is important. After a long pause, fine, but I don't understand why you're being so dramatic. I didn't respond further. The time for explaining myself was over. Tomorrow would be about truth. Uncomfortable, long, overdue truth. Sunday afternoon arrived with a clarity of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I'd slept soundly for the first time since arriving in Michigan, waking with the certainty that regardless of the outcome, confronting Chloe's deception was necessary for my own self-respect and for any possibility of an authentic relationship moving forward. I dressed deliberately, dark jeans, a light blue button-down shirt, and the watch her father had left me. Nothing flashy that could reinforce Chloe's narrative of me showing off, but nothing that undermined the success I'd legitimately earned. The weather had turned. A steady spring rain had replaced yesterday's sunshine. Fitting, I thought, for the conversation ahead. I arrived at Chloe and Mike's house precisely at 2 o'clock, carrying a leather portfolio stuffed with all the documentation I'd compiled. Chloe opened the door before I could ring the bell. Her expression was a mixture of annoyance and apprehension. She'd clearly put effort into her appearance. Hair freshly styled, makeup carefully applied, dressed in an expensive-looking sweater and jeans that projected casual affluence. "I still don't understand why this couldn't wait until your next visit," she said by way of greeting, stepping aside to let me enter. "You've completely disrupted our Sunday." "Some things shouldn't wait," I replied evenly. "Is everyone here?" She nodded reluctantly. "The kids are at Mike's parents' house." The arrangement of people in the living room spoke volumes. Mike sat in his usual armchair, slightly apart from his parents on the sofa. Daniel and Olivia were at the far end of the room, their body language suggesting discomfort. All conversation stopped when I entered. "Thank you all for making time for this," I began, remaining standing as Chloe took a seat beside Mike. "I know it's unexpected, but after what happened at dinner last night, there are some things that need to be clarified." "If this is about what Leo said," Chloe interjected quickly, "we've already explained to him that he misunderstood. Children exaggerate. You know how it is." "This isn't just about Leo," I replied calmly. "It's about a pattern that's been going on for years, one that I've allowed to continue for too long." I opened my portfolio and removed the first document, a summary of all financial contributions I'd made to Chloe and Mike's household. For the past 8 years, I provided significant financial support to Chloe and Mike, I explained, handing copies of the summary to everyone. Nearly $73,000 in total, including 81 monthly mortgage payments of $900 each. Mike's father, Gary, looked up sharply from the paper, his expression shifting from dismissive to intensely attentive. "What's this about, Chloe?" he asked, turning to my sister. "It's not what it looks like," Chloe replied, her voice rising slightly. "Ethan's always been generous with gifts, but he's making it sound like we've been taking advantage." "I'm not making accusations," I interrupted gently. "I'm simply stating facts. The money was freely given. That's not the issue. The issue is that I've recently learned that my financial support has been mischaracterized to all of you. I've been told that some of you believe I've been financially dependent on Chloe and Mike when the opposite is true. That's ridiculous." Mike sputtered, his face flushing. "We never said I have texts and emails," I continued, removing another document from my portfolio, messages from Chloe to various family members describing loans she supposedly made to me, references to her helping me through tough times, statements about my career being unstable. I handed these to Daniel, who looked through them with growing discomfort before passing them to Olivia. "These are from our group chat," Olivia said quietly, looking at Chloe. "You told us you were helping Ethan with rent when his hours were cut last year." She turned to me. "Were your hours cut?" "No," I replied. "I received a promotion and a 20% raise last February. I've never had my hours reduced. I've never been in financial distress. I've never borrowed money from Chloe or Mike." The room fell silent as this information sank in. Carol, who had been watching carefully, reached for the papers in her husband's hand. "What about the business loan?" she asked, referencing the $15,000 I'd given Mike. "You told us Ethan had borrowed money from your inheritance and was paying it back." Before Chloe could respond, I removed another document, a copy of the wire transfer with a memo line clearly reading Gus Expansion. "There was no loan," I explained. "When Mike wanted to open the second dealership location, I gave them $15,000 as a gift. The same applies to the $8,000 for their roof replacement 2 years ago and countless other expenses I've covered." Mike stood suddenly, his expression darkening. "We never asked for handouts," he snapped. "If you've been keeping score all these years, maybe you shouldn't have offered in the first place." "I'm not keeping score," I replied, maintaining my calm demeanor. "I gave freely because I love this family. I'm only showing you these documents now because I need everyone to understand the reality of our financial relationship." I turned to address everyone. "I've worked incredibly hard for my success. I put myself through college, working 3 jobs simultaneously. I've earned every promotion through dedication and skill. The Tesla in the driveway is mine, purchased outright with cash from my recent performance bonus. I'm not showing off or pretending to be something I'm not." Chloe had been growing increasingly agitated now. She stood, tears welling in her eyes. "So this is what it's about? You want to humiliate me in front of everyone because your feelings were hurt because a 7-year-old said something silly at dinner?" "No," I said softly. This is about truth. For years, you've created a fictional narrative about my life, one where I'm struggling, pretending, or somehow less successful than I actually am. You've told your children, your in-laws, and even our mutual friends that I borrow cars to impress people, that I live beyond my means, that I need your financial support. None of that is true, and it needs to stop. Why would she do that? Gary asked, looking genuinely confused. Daniel cleared his throat. I think I understand, he said carefully. If Ethan was struggling, it would be easier to explain why Chloe and Mike needed his financial help while simultaneously dismissing his life choices. It can't be both ways. Either he's successful enough to provide substantial support, or he's failing and needs their help. The narrative has to be consistent. Chloe collapsed back in her seat, tears now flowing freely. You don't understand what it's like, she cried, her voice breaking. You left. You went to college, built a fancy career, moved to a glamorous city. Do you know what happened to me? I got pregnant, married young, and stayed in the same town, doing the same things with the same people forever. I never judged your choices, I replied gently. You didn't have to, she cried. Your life judges mine every day. Every promotion, every trip you take, every success you have reminds me of everything I gave up. And yes, I've been jealous and resentful. Is that what you want me to admit? Mike moved to her side, placing a hand on her shoulder that she immediately shrugged off. And you? She turned on him. You were happy enough to take his money while laughing behind his back about how he thinks he's better than us. Mike's face paled. That's not fair, Chloe. You're the one who told everyone he was struggling. You're the one who said his job wasn't secure. I just went along with what you told me. The room descended into an uncomfortable silence. The extent of the deception was now laid bare for everyone. Carol looked between her son and daughter-in-law with growing disappointment. Gary stared at his hands. Daniel and Olivia exchanged glances. I didn't come here to create division or place blame, I said finally. I came to establish truth and set boundaries moving forward. I won't be contributing to your mortgage or other expenses anymore. Not because I'm angry, but because it's created an unhealthy dynamic between us. So, you're cutting us off completely? Chloe asked, a note of panic entering her voice. I'm ending financial support that's been misrepresented and taken for granted. I clarified. I'm still your brother. I still want to be part of Leo and Lily's lives. But moving forward, our relationship needs to be based on mutual respect and honesty. And if we need help, Mike asked, his tone somewhere between defensive and concerned. Then we could discuss it openly and honestly, I replied. But no more monthly payments. No more expecting me to cover emergencies or extras without acknowledgement. And absolutely no more diminishing my career or success to make yourselves feel better. I gather my documents, returning them to the portfolio. I'll be leaving for Seattle tomorrow morning. I've said what I needed to say. What happens next is up to all of you. As I turned to leave, Daniel stood. I'll walk you out. In the foyer, away from the others, he spoke quietly. That took courage. For what it's worth, Olivia and I should have questioned Chloe's stories more carefully. The inconsistencies were there if we'd been paying attention. It's not your responsibility, I assured him. We all believed what we wanted to believe. What now, he asked. Will you cut contact completely? I shook my head. That's not what I want. But real relationships can't be built on lies and manipulation. The ball is in their court now. As I drove away from the house, a complex mixture of emotions washed over me. Relief at having finally spoken my truth, sadness for the pain it had caused, uncertainty about what would remain of my relationship with my sister and her family. But beneath it all was a foundation of self-respect that had been missing for too long. The immediate aftermath unfolded in ways both expected and surprising. I returned to my hotel room emotionally drained, but with the clarity that comes from finally addressing long-suppressed truths. I ordered room service, answered some work emails, and tried to process the events. Around 8 that evening, my phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. You've always been so judgmental. I hope you're satisfied with yourself for destroying this family. I didn't respond. Classic projection. Dr. Evans had warned me about this. Engaging would only fuel the fire. 15 minutes later, Mike called. His voice was tight with controlled anger. "You could have addressed this privately with us," he said without preamble. "Did you have to embarrass Chloe in front of my entire family?" "The deception wasn't private," I replied calmly. "The narrative about me was shared with everyone. The correction needed to be equally comprehensive." "My parents are questioning everything now," he continued. "Dad's talking about financial responsibility, and Mom's asking how we could have accepted so much money from you while—" He trailed off. "While what?" I prompted. A heavy sigh came through the line. "While saying the things we said." He paused. "Look, I know how it appears, but you have to understand Chloe's position. She's built her whole identity around being successful here, being the one who made the right choices. Your success threatens that narrative. My success is the result of my choices and hard work," I pointed out. "It doesn't diminish hers unless she allows it to." "Easy for you to say," he muttered. "Anyway, I didn't call to argue. I wanted to ask about the mortgage payment. Were you serious about stopping it completely? We've built our budget around that money." The audacity was still breathtaking. "Yes, I was serious. You've had 81 payments from me. That's $72,900 toward a house I don't live in. It's more than enough. We can't just adjust our budget overnight," he protested. "At least give us a few months to—" I interrupted firmly. "The payment stops now. You make a good living at the dealership, Mike. You and Chloe need to live within your means." The line went silent for several seconds before he responded with a cold, "Fine. Don't expect to see much of the kids." Then the threat hit its intended target. Leo and Lily were innocent in all this, and the thought of losing my relationship with them was painful, but I recognized the manipulation tactic for what it was. "Using the children as leverage is beneath you," I said quietly. "Think about what that teaches them." He hung up without responding. I was just preparing for bed when another knock came at my hotel room door. Looking through the peephole, I was surprised to see Leo standing there with Daniel behind him. I opened the door immediately. "What's going on?" Daniel looked apologetic. "Leo overheard some of the conversation after you left. He was really upset and insisted on seeing you. I hope that's okay. I texted Chloe that he's with me." Leo launched himself at me in a fierce hug. "I'm sorry, Uncle Ethan. I didn't mean to make everyone mad." I knelt to his level, returning the hug. "Hey, buddy, you didn't do anything wrong. Grown-ups sometimes have complicated disagreements that have nothing to do with you." "But everyone was yelling after you left," he said, his voice small. "Mommy was crying, and Grandma kept saying she was disappointed." Dad slammed the door and drove away. I let him sit on the edge of the bed while Daniel leaned against the wall, giving us some space. "Leo, listen to me," I said, looking directly into his eyes. "None of this is your fault. What you said at dinner just brought some grown-up issues into the open that needed to be discussed. But Mommy said I embarrassed her by repeating private things. Adults shouldn't tell children things they don't want repeated," I explained gently. "You were just being honest, which is exactly what you should always do." He considered this for a moment. "Is it true that you bought your car yourself?" "Mom said you were just pretending." "Yes, I bought it myself," I confirmed. "I work very hard at my job, and sometimes I'm able to buy nice things because of that hard work." "Cool," he said, his demeanor brightening slightly. "Can we still go for a ride sometime?" "Absolutely," I promised, though unsure when that opportunity might actually arise. "Anytime I'm visiting." After Leo used the bathroom, Daniel suggested they should head back. "Olivia's waiting in the car. We'll drop him at home." "Thank you for bringing him," I said sincerely. "It means a lot." "He was really worried about you," Daniel replied. "And for what it's worth, Olivia and I talked with Gary and Carol after you left. They're processing a lot. This has been quite a revelation for them about Chloe and Mike." After they left, I received a message from Olivia. "James told me about Leo's visit. Hope I was okay. Just wanted you to know we're here for you. This family stuff is messy, but you did the right thing. Let's stay in touch." Her support was unexpected, but deeply appreciated. Perhaps something positive could emerge from this painful situation. Authentic relationships with family members who valued truth and respect. Around midnight, my phone rang again. Chloe's name appeared on the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. "How dare you fill Leo's head with your version of events?" she began, her words slightly slurred. suggesting she'd been drinking. He came home talking about how adults shouldn't tell kids to keep secrets and how you really did buy your fancy car. That's hardly a controversial statement, Chloe, I replied wearily. I did buy my own car, and adults shouldn't put children in the middle of their issues. You've turned everyone against me, she continued, her tone shifting from angry to tearful. My in-laws think I'm some kind of manipulative liar. Mike's barely speaking to me. Even Daniel and Olivia are being weird. I simply told the truth, I said. If that's turned people against you, perhaps you should consider why. You've always been so perfect, she spat, anger returning. Perfect grades, perfect career, perfect life. Some of us make mistakes, Ethan. Some of us have regrets. We can't all be as flawless as you. I've never claimed to be perfect, I said quietly. I've just worked hard and made different choices. And now you're punishing me for mine by cutting us off financially, she accused. I'm in an unhealthy pattern. I corrected. That's not punishment. It's a boundary. The conversation continued in this circular pattern for several minutes, Chloe alternating between angry accusations, tearful pleas, and attempts at manipulation. I maintained my calm, repeating my position without engaging with her emotional tactics. Finally, exhausted, I ended the call with a simple, I love you, Chloe, but this conversation isn't productive. We can talk again when you're ready to discuss things honestly. The next morning, as I prepared to check out, I received a text from Mike's father, Gary. Ethan, I owe you an apology. Had no idea about the financial situation. Inappropriate comments were made based on false information. Would like to speak when you have time. I called him from the airport. Our conversation was brief, but significant. He expressed genuine regret for accepting Chloe's portrayal of me without question and acknowledged my generosity. Mike and Chloe need to stand on their own feet, he concluded. Carol and I enabled them too, in different ways. Perhaps this is the wake-up call they needed. On the flight back to Seattle, I reflected on how quickly the family system had recalibrated once the truth was exposed. Those who valued honesty, Daniel, Olivia, and eventually Gary and Carol, had adjusted their perceptions and reached out. Those who had benefited from the deception, Chloe and Mike, were struggling to maintain their narrative in the face of overwhelming evidence. As the plane touched down, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. The family I'd thought I had might never be the same, but perhaps something more authentic could eventually take its place. 6 months have passed since that fateful family dinner and the confrontation that followed. The journey from that painful weekend to today hasn't been linear, but it has been transformative in ways I never anticipated. The first few weeks back in Seattle were difficult. Chloe alternated between angry texts, tearful phone calls, and periods of complete silence. Mike communicated only through terse messages about practical matters. Leo and Lily sent me drawings and dictated messages through Daniel and Olivia, who had become unexpected allies and bridges to the children during the estrangement from their parents. About a month after our confrontation, Chloe called late one evening, her voice subdued and lacking the defensive edge that had characterized our previous conversations. I've been seeing a therapist, she announced without preamble. She suggested I might have some issues with comparison and insecurity. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was the first acknowledgement that her behavior might have deeper roots than simple misunderstanding. Our conversation that night was cautious, but more honest than any we'd had in years. She didn't directly address the lies, but she did admit to feeling overwhelmed by jealousy when hearing about my career advancements. 2 weeks later, Mike reached out with a more direct approach. I should have questioned Chloe's stories about you more carefully, he admitted, and I definitely shouldn't have gone along with them or repeated them to others. That was wrong, and I'm sorry. Their mortgage payment came due, and for the first time in nearly 7 years, they covered it entirely themselves. It wasn't easy. Mike took extra shifts at the dealership, and Chloe found part-time work as an administrative assistant at the local community college. The adjustment to living within their actual means was challenging but necessary for their growth and our relationship's healing. By the 3-month mark, we had established a new normal. I video chatted with Leo and Lily weekly. Chloe joined these calls occasionally, her initial awkwardness gradually giving way to more natural interaction. We carefully avoided any discussion of finances or my career, focusing instead on the children's activities and shared family memories. Gary and Carol underwent their own reckoning. Recognizing how their emphasis on appearances and status had contributed to Chloe's insecurities, they began making conscious efforts to celebrate achievements based on character and effort rather than material outcomes. Gary even called me specifically to proudly report that he'd congratulated Leo on improving his reading skills rather than on winning a baseball game, a small but significant shift in his value system. My relationships with Daniel and Olivia deepened considerably. What had been casual, holiday-only connections evolved into genuine friendship. They visited Seattle for a long weekend in August, and I showed them around the city I'd grown to love. Without Chloe's distorted lens coloring their perception, they saw my life as it truly was, not extravagant or showy, but comfortable, fulfilling, and earned through consistent effort. The most profound changes, however, happened within me. Through continued work with Dr. Evans, I examined the patterns that had allowed me to become entangled in such an unhealthy dynamic for so long. I recognized how my parents' death had intensified my desire to maintain family connections at any cost. How my childhood experiences with financial insecurity had made generosity a central value. And how my natural conflict avoidance had enabled Chloe's manipulations to go unchallenged. I learned to establish healthy boundaries, not just with Chloe, but in all my relationships. I practiced saying no without guilt and expressing my needs directly rather than hoping others would intuit them. I began to see how my professional success had become a form of validation, driving me to work excessive hours and sacrifice personal relationships for career advancement. With this new awareness, I made significant changes in my own life. I reduced my working hours from 60 to a more reasonable 45 per week. I joined a local hiking group and made genuine friendships outside of work. I even started dating again after years of putting romance on the back burner. Nothing serious yet, but I'm open to possibilities in a way I wasn't before. Financially, I redirected the resources that had previously gone to supporting Chloe's family. I purchased a modest but comfortable condo in a neighborhood I love. I increased my retirement contributions and established a separate investment account for future goals. I even set aside money for a proper vacation, my first in nearly a decade, planning a 2-week trip to Japan next spring. Last month, I returned to Michigan for Leo's 8th birthday. The atmosphere was markedly different from previous visits. Chloe greeted me with a genuine hug rather than the perfunctory one I'd grown accustomed to. Mike shook my hand and met my eyes directly, the defensive posture notably absent. They proudly showed me their newly refinanced mortgage at a lower interest rate with payments they could manage independently. The most touching moment came when Leo proudly showed me his science project, a model of the solar system he'd built entirely himself. "Uncle Ethan," he said, "Mom said you might be able to help me understand how gravity works. She told me you're really smart about science stuff." It was a small thing, perhaps, but significant. Chloe acknowledging my knowledge as valuable rather than threatening. A step towards seeing my abilities as resources to be shared rather than successes to be diminished. That evening, as we sat on the porch after the children had gone to bed, Chloe spoke the words I'd waited years to hear. "I'm sorry, Ethan. Truly sorry. I was so caught up in feeling like I'd failed in my own life that I couldn't celebrate yours. Instead of appreciating your generosity, I resented that you were in a position to be generous. That was wrong, and I'm working to be better. The apology wasn't perfect, and our relationship remains a work in progress. The trust that was broken will take years to fully rebuild." But in that moment, I recognized that the painful confrontation 6 months earlier had been necessary, not just for my own self-respect, but for Chloe's growth as well. The most profound lesson I've learned through this experience is that true generosity must include honesty. By avoiding difficult conversations to preserve harmony, I wasn't actually being kind. I was enabling destructive patterns that harmed everyone involved. Real love means caring enough to speak truth, establish boundaries, and hold others accountable. I've also learned that our worth isn't determined by how much we sacrifice for others, but by how authentically we live our values. My desire to help my sister was genuine, but my approach was flawed. True support empowers others rather than creating dependency. Today, I maintain my boundaries while keeping my heart open. I contribute to my niece and nephew's college funds rather than their parents' mortgage. I share my professional knowledge freely, but no longer apologize for my success. I offer emotional support without financial bailouts. It's a healthier balance for everyone. If you're struggling with family members who diminish your achievements or take advantage of your generosity, remember that establishing boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for authentic relationships. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the opportunity to stand on their own feet and face reality honestly.